So, Ayr, I told them a little bit about your company. Can you give us fill in the blanks? I mean, this kind of understanding the customer from their values point of view. Can you kind of give us the intersection? Where did you come up with these ideas? Why did you quit a big-time paying job at McKinsey to start flipping burgers and start your own company? Kind of bring us into the game. Who are you? What makes this tick? Did you read a book? Was it a cataclysmic experience? What happened?
Well, the best way to introduce folks to Clover would be if I had some food to share with you guys, but all my food's on the East Coast, so sorry about that. I don't know when I first had this idea, but it was a while back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I guess the origins for it were very personal. I had thought for a long time I wanted to find a way to have an impact on environmental issues, in particular global warming, and I thought I was going to do wind farms or something like that. And I read an article, it's actually called Livestock's Long Shadow, and it was about the connection between food and the environment. And for me, that was really eye-opening because, it was 5 years ago or so, I didn't know there was a connection. And I'm really sympathetic with a lot of our customers don't know that either, but I had no idea that the two were connected. I knew a lot about green energy and green building and changes people were making to transportation, but I had never thought of livestock being connected to global warming. So that was very very personal origins, got me thinking about how to change the way people are eating, and maybe if I could have an impact there, I might have a much larger impact than I would in some of the other areas. And it's also food. This issue is just really not being addressed. There's a lot of really smart people, a lot of money going against green energy and increasing the efficiency of our buildings and transportation, but food stands out in those big factors as being one that just isn't really being addressed at scale.
Can you just tell us the executive summary of what exactly the connection is between livestock and global warming?
Yeah, it's not flatulence, not exactly. It's not only that.
I didn't want to use that word. I was thinking you can't say fart,
But that's part of it. But the bigger idea, the easier way to think about it is just that that meat is a really inefficient way for us to get sustenance. So it's the factors vary. Maybe it's 10 times, 20 times less efficient. But the idea is that you've got to, you have to feed that hog or cattle for 6 months of its life. They don't live very long in the commercial lots, but you still have to feed it all that time, and there's a lot of waste generated, and there's acres of corn that need to be grown, and there's a lot of resources that go into all those activities. And if you just eat the plants for the nutrients, it's much more efficient by like a factor of 10 or 20.
Okay.
And this is why the livestock industry contributes, by most estimates, more CO2 globally than all of transportation combined.
Okay.
So that's the that was for me a big idea, and got me thinking. And then
it's not a very sexy idea, though.
Well, I love food. Food is right.
Okay. So how do you turn that into a business?
Yeah. So that was the question. I had this idea. What if you could serve people that were not vegetarians food without meat? And I think that was sort of my early insight is if you could serve 100 people one meal a month without meat in it, you're going to be having an equivalent impact to turning one person from a carnivore into a vegetarian. And I think that it's much more likely you can scale that. I think like changing someone's entire lifestyle is a really tough challenge to take on. But I think everybody can easily understand that we could all eat more vegetables. So then the next challenge became, how do you make those vegetables sexy, right? How do you make something people want to eat, that they dream about, that they're telling their friends about? Mm-hmm. And that was our first real challenge or risk to work out for the company.
Okay, so understanding, so now you're taking this idea, a problem, and Larry teaches this whole class about, okay, what's a problem you're trying to solve at the beginning of the entrepreneurial cycle? So that's the problem. And you talk a lot about this, you don't use these words, but lean thinking. And can you tell us about that, the minimum viable product idea? We teach that here at Pepperdine. And it's the way you've built your company.
Yeah, it's funny. Larry was asking last night if there was if I took an entrepreneurship class when I was getting an MBA, and I did. And one of the things that stuck with me from that class, and is fundamental to this, is I had this professor Bob Higgins, and it may be one of the only things that really stuck with me from the class, but it's been very, very valuable to me. But he had this idea that an entrepreneur's job is to figure out at any given point what your biggest point of risk is, and then buy it away with the least amount of money possible. So that's been maybe it's because it's so simple, it's easy for me to grab onto, but that's been a way I've thought about the business from the beginning. Just at any given point, what's our biggest point of risk? And then what's the cheapest possible way I can work away that risk? So that first one was just, I had this idea, but can you possibly make food that people that otherwise are eating meat every day would prefer? Because that's what I need to do to win customers. It can't be adequate or okay. It needs to be that they would rather eat my food than something else. And that was our initial sort of biggest point of risk. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to buy it away without spending too much money. And I was going to hire out, as you're starting a company, you have all sorts of ideas that change suddenly. But I had this idea I was going to hire a chef that probably a lot of you would have heard of or know their name to develop our menu. And I was at a tasting, and I just thought, this isn't going to work. I'm going to need someone to iterate this with me. So that was my first move to this. I hired on my own chef, as a guy who had worked at the French Laundry, and I decided not to outsource the menu development. And then we were trying to figure out, how do you test the menu? And I had money for focus groups, but I could afford 2 of them, and you get like 12 people at a focus group. And then we were thinking maybe a tasting party, but I thought, all my friends are going to lie to me and tell me the food tastes good. And so then I had this idea, what if I hire a food truck and I pay him to sell my food, and I'll interview each of the customers each day. So it'd be like a focus group every day. I thought maybe 20 people a day would eat the food, maybe 10 would talk to me. And I approached this guy named Betrus, who I used to eat with every day. And he said, absolutely not. He knew me, but he said, I'm not letting you do that with my truck. But he told me to come back and meet him later. And this was pre-Kogi, so this was before the whole food truck revolution by a few months. But food trucks weren't very sexy. They were just, this guy sold falafel off of his truck. He'd been doing it for years. And he had me come back later that day, which I did, because he recognized me, because I used to eat from him every single day. He had this soda falafel baklava combo when I was a student, and it was $2.50 for all of that. So I ate with him 4 days a week. And it's an aside, but I found out later it was $2.50 because he hated his competitor on the street and was trying to put him out of business. So I lucked out. I benefited from that for 2 years. And it worked. He did put the other guy out of business. But back to the story. So he brought me around.
One of the E's is ethics. I just wanted to. Casey, you were going to say anything else about it.
He showed me around all the different food places, like where trucks were serviced in Boston. So, I saw this giant parking lot. And most of the food trucks in Boston were you guys don't really have them out here as much, but they go to job sites. They're called canteen trucks. They're built on the back of a pickup truck, and they go to a job site like construction workers, and they open up and they have some coffee and donuts and pizza or something. So he showed me those, and there's a parking lot with 40 of them all dumping their food.
We have them here. They're called roach coaches.
Okay, yeah. Yours are nicer than ours, though, despite the name. He showed me that, and he said, you need to start a truck, and I thought he was crazy, but fast forwarding a month later, I was buying our first truck, and we decided to do this ourselves. We'd buy a truck. We were going to run it for 6 weeks, and maybe I'd serve 20 people a day. My chef would make the food. I'd interview the customers, and we'd develop our menu that way. So that was our solution for how to spend very little money and buy down this biggest risk we were facing.
Okay, so now we have a business model. It ends up being very successful. I went back and did a little bit of research. One of the trucks had close to 40 people in line at lunch at Harvard Square. I went down and I interviewed a number of people through the line, and I asked them, why are you at a vegetarian food truck? And many of the people said, this is vegetarian? I've been coming here for 3 months. I didn't know this was vegetarian. I eat the chickpea fritter. I thought it was da 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 da. And so 95% of your customers aren't vegetarian. Out of, what is it, out of 70% of them, after the first time they eat, recommend it to a friend. It's one of the fastest growing restaurant chains in Boston now, and soon to scale into another city. You talk about, okay, we're going to take this concept and I want to be as big as McDonald. You say that publicly. I've read that on your blog and different places. Can you tell us about that? I mean, isn't that sort of like, wow, why do you want to do that? I mean, why do you want to be so big? Is that really something that you could do? Is it possible?
I think it is. It's
Why?
and I think that more than I used to, which is sort of exciting and terrifying at the same time. But the food that the people we're serving, it's a really broad section of people, and the way we're defining ourselves is people connect to it in a very broad way, and we're really known for the quality of the food, and we can carry that to different parts of the day. So it's easy for us to build our breakfast because we're not a burger place or a burrito place. And we can also carry it to different kinds of people. Great tasting food is something that gets young people and old people excited, and across different demographics. And to the core of your question, why do we want it to be large? And sometimes my employees who feel the stress, it's a lot of work to grow fast, and we've been doubling every 9 months or so. And so sometimes I hear from my employees, why do we need to grow so fast? And I think there's a couple answers to that. One, it's how we're going to create the most value. We're in the startup stage, and we're everything we do is about building out what we're going to be in the future. So we need to be growing and pushing ourselves to create the value that I want to for my investors. But it goes beyond that. But for me, most of our metrics have to do with how many meals we're serving, how many people we're serving. The things I think we're doing that matter all are linked back to that. So the more people we're serving, the more good we're doing. Mm-hmm. And the way we think a little bit about the company is I want to do the right thing in the different parts of the company. I want to create a good environment for my employees so that their lives improve now they've come to work with us. I want to do the right things for our customers that, it sounds like an exaggeration, but you literally have people whose lives are transformed because they have a Clover nearby. And they start eating with us 4, 5, 6 times a week, and it becomes the most exciting part of their day they look forward to. It becomes why they want to stay working where they're working right now, because they don't want to move away from where we are. And that all sounds it sounds broad, but it's really true. And we want to do the right thing by them, and also health-wise, we want people to be able to eat with us daily and improve their health. But we want to do the right things by our suppliers, and so we think about all these. If we're doing all of these things right, then the more of it we're doing, the more good we're doing for everybody.
Okay, so just to kind of keep this this whole kind of thinking, and this is a business school, and we're talking about this model where we don't think that it's mutually exclusive to make a profit and to have a great product or service. If I have interpreted the numbers correctly, you go out, you get an audience, you find out that they resonate for that menu there, then you build a brick and mortar restaurant there, then you move the food truck somewhere else and keep pioneering. That's kind of the model. And within 9 months, you're as profitable as a McDonald. You have Chipotle type of numbers in terms of which is state of the art, gold standard benchmark for this quick service food industry. So it's a model that's actually working. Now there's a lot going on with this model, and I want to know if that's like, for instance, your food trucks are just big whiteboards that you draw all over. The menu is very cryptic, so people have to ask questions. There's no cash registers. You talk to people face-to-face using Square technology with the iPhone. This customer engagement that you have. A lot of the people don't even know about the values of the company. They just love the food, but you have this direct connection with them. Is that something that was architected or just happened?
I think it's a combination. I'd done enough research that I knew for our industry, trial is a really big deal. For fast food and fast casual, it's one of our biggest challenges, especially for newer concepts, is just getting someone to try it. So I knew that that was important and was going to be a challenge for us. I don't think I knew getting into it what my tools would be to tackle that.
Okay.
And this whole bit about community was actually a pretty big surprise to me. I wasn't planning. Early business plans didn't say anything about that. But we found with our first food truck, we had these long lines, and then we found people in line were turning around and introducing themselves to somebody else there and starting up conversations. And you'd have some newbie coming up and looking at the menu, and somebody else who's a frequent customer would come over and start walking them through the menu. So we had a lot of this community interaction that I didn't expect or anticipate, but became really powerful. And I started to understand that one of our most powerful tools to tackle this issue of trial was going to be the customers themselves. I think before seeing all that, I was probably expecting I was going to have to come up with some clever way to tackle this trial issue, or maybe sample a lot or something like that. But we've come to find that the biggest, of my customers, 60% of them found out about us because a friend told them about Clover. We'll have something around 65% of my customers have told more than 12 people about Clover. So those recommendation rates are just off the chart for any business, but especially for a food business. And that's how that's how it works. So a lot of these things you were mentioning, the way we take orders, the way we share information, we work really hard and we do a lot of really creative, innovative things in those areas. They're all with this goal of deepening that connection with the customers and arming the customers with the stories and motivation they need to go tell others to come try us.
Oh, fantastic. Larry, can we do questions?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so one open up for questions. So if you've got questions for Ayr, go ahead. We got one back here.
Great story. Thank you for sharing. What do you do with your excess food?
We don't have any.
You
so-
repurpose all of it, including prep stuff?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, it sort of gets back to how each of the little things we're doing all line up to, as we make the decisions, we're making all of the different decisions in the business with the same underlying principles. So it's not a mistake that they line up with one another. But, and a lot of the things we care about reinforce one another instead of competing with one another. So, for example, we care a ton about the food tasting great. That's how I'm going to get the customers to come back. That's how I'm going to, get somebody who's otherwise eating meat to prefer my meal. For it to taste great, for vegetables to taste great, they've got to be really high quality and they need to be fresh. And fresh doesn't mean that they, just that they weren't frozen. We have no freezers, but it also, we think about it more as the time from when it was harvested to when it was cut to when it was eaten. We think about those points, and we try to make that as short as possible. So about 80 to 90% of our food is eaten within 12 to 18 hours of it having been cut. About 60% of it's eaten within 3 hours of having been cut. So those are insane times for my industry. I mean, but it's what makes our food taste so great, and it also allows us to manage away from any waste. In the food business, you've got two choices. You either freeze stuff and then fry it, or it's usually what happens. And then it doesn't really go to waste because it's in the freezer if you're not serving it, or you run out. And the only other choice is to have waste. So we run out of food all the time, and our menu changes. We will when we're smaller, we would run out and just be out for the day, and we still do that a bit on trucks. In the restaurants, we'll typically run out of one item and maybe replace it with another item. So I might run out of a potato leek soup I made. As it's running low, they're making another one, and they're making like an African peanut soup. So the one runs out and another one comes on. But we purposefully create everything in pretty small batches, and we run it all down. We have almost zero waste. In the production waste, scraps and stuff, we compost all of that. But it's infinitesimally small. Occasionally, somebody won't FIFO properly. It's something in our industry, first in, first out. So sometimes, like, basically it means you'll have an item that might be stuck behind something else. And for us, if anything's been around for 3 days, we toss it. So occasionally something gets squirreled away and doesn't get caught. But for us, this is teeny. It's almost zero waste.
What is your food cost?
Our food costs, we're looking around 20% right now. So we were 28% 3 years ago, and then 26, and then around 20% this year. Which is fantastic. I mean, it's really, for our industry, it's really amazing. McDonald's is around 18%, Chipotle is around 28%, and those are two of the leaders. So it's been going down quickly. We're still not at full scale, so I think it's going to go even lower. But I didn't really mention it when Michael's first asking me about the model, but a lot of what we're doing, our protein's really, really cheap. So Chipotle, if you get a burrito from them, there's probably about $3.20 of food cost in that burrito. And for me, you get my most popular sandwich, chickpea fritter, it's about 92 cents of food cost. It's a big, big difference. And they charge a little bit more, and I charge a little bit less, but it's a huge difference. And it basically goes back to the fact that instead of buying meat, which is pretty expensive, I'm buying for that sandwich chickpeas, and I'm buying them dry, and I can buy a pound of dry organic chickpeas for like $1.03, and that serves like 30 people, right? So my protein's really, really cheap. So when we get to reallocate that savings, we keep some of it. We use some of it to keep our prices lower. We use some of it to buy more organic inputs and other higher quality ingredients from local purveyors.
We have Mark. Mark, go ahead, Mark.
My son came home talking yesterday about my son is a freshman and doing a research paper on bug protein and how it's 20 times efficient as other proteins from grain and so forth. Any plans for bugs in the food?
I just talked to 2 young women at Harvard who are starting a bug company just 2 days ago. They were looking for advice. I told them, I think if anybody has a harder mission than what I do, it's going to be you. I said, good luck. I mean, I think it's interesting. There's some experimentation with it. There are some fine dining chefs who are experimenting. I think the most successful stuff has been when like the cricket is left whole. I think that one of the challenges, if it's bug meal and things like that, there's just so many strong negative connotations with bugs that if people feel at all that it's sort of hidden or that they were taken, I think that's really a challenge. But it's interesting to see how it'll evolve. Food is so cultural, right? And people have these strong beliefs and feelings, and you have to work with them, not against them. I think bugs has a big challenge there. We had a situation, one of my restaurants, a woman came in and, she had breakfast and she wrote us an email that night. She said, my oatmeal had a moth in it. She's like, you have a moth infestation. So, we wrote back to her, very nice. Oh, I'm so sorry. It is true that grain does get moths in it sometimes. But, we didn't know more than that. So sorry. She came in the next day. She was, so worked up about it. She came in the next day at 7 a.m. when we opened. And she came with her moth she wanted to show to us. And the manager at the time, who's fantastic, my morning supervisor, he said, "Oh, he's very nice with her." He said, "That's not a moth. That's like a piece of the oat, because we use whole grain oat. It's actually like a piece of like oat fiber, the husk of the oat." And she didn't think he knew what he was talking about. She stuck around for 2 more hours until the manager showed up, and then talked to him about it, and he said the same thing. But I mean, it's just to show you, it's amazing how strongly, she invested 3-4 hours of her time into this moth, which wasn't a moth at all. And I wasn't even trying to sell her a bug. So I think it'll be an interesting challenge for sure.
Got some interesting kind of like moth watering terms, for branding, right? Kind of cool. Got other questions back here. Go ahead, right in front.
Hi, I'm Sue Funkhauser, Female Performance. Thank you for sharing. I want to switch to another important shareholder, which is in your employees, right? So I'm wondering, you said you've grown very, very rapidly, and I'm wondering what lessons have you learned
Well, mine's particularly challenging industry, but also really exciting. It has a lot of opportunity. It's a lot of people. You know, I'm still not that large, but I have 150 or so employees. And our turnover is better than the industry. We're at about 40%. The industry is like 57%. But it's 40%. It's a lot. And you add to that all the new people we need to bring in for the new growth. I'm going to, this time next year, I'll probably have about 280 employees. It's a lot of people. I think that we're lucky in a lot of ways. What we're doing is just so different than what is done in our industry that it's not like this very subtle point I have to explain to our employees. I mean, anybody who's worked in food or even people who have just eaten it, when they come in as an employee, they start noticing right away all the differences. And I think that helps, create and reinforce the internal culture we have. Because they might naturally ask a question, well, why are we doing that? And then there's an answer from somebody. So I think some of that culture builds up naturally. A lot of it comes from the managers, who I work closely with. And we have some really clever training things we do. So I'd say all of those have helped us build the culture. I think the company's culture has become more strong, not less, as we've grown. It's just more and more distinct each day. And I think part of that's because it's more powerful. When we were smaller, it was just me. And now it's not. It's sort of a larger group of people that are defining and policing the culture. And in a lot of ways, I think that makes it much stronger. But it's, for us, people are the biggest limit we have on what we do. I mean, if we're falling down, it's because we don't have the right people in place. If we have to slow down in growth, it's because, it would be because I don't have the right managers in place. It has everything to do with our growth trajectory and our path. And it's challenged because in my industry, we ought to be charging, you all should be paying $20 to $25 when you go out and get a meal. That is what it should be. And then we could pay the employees properly, so they could actually live on the wages. Instead, I'm selling a sandwich for $6. And so we pay better than, I just found out the other day, I almost pay, my average wage rate's almost better than Whole Foods. I'm like a quarter behind, which I was really proud about. I was sort of surprised and also proud about it. But it's still, our average wage rate's like $10.25. So it's not exactly the culture question you were asking about, but it is a important and big challenge for my industry. And I'm proud to be ahead of others, but at the same time, it's hard to figure out how people can create long-term sustainability with those sort of wage rates. Obviously, our managers get paid more, but the bulk of our employees aren't getting manager pay.
What about Ayr as you move from Boston to your next city next year? How do you keep that culture in place when you're no longer touching your 20 managers or whatever every day?
Yeah, it's we'll seed it with folks who are deep into what we're doing. So Washington, D.C. is going to be our next market. We're in the process of planning that right now. I have this guy named Vincenzo Pileggi, and he was one of my first employees, so he's been working with us for about 4 years now. And he came to us from the Four Seasons. He has a culinary background. He's lived and breathed Clover for the last 4 years. He knows everything. He's managed multiple units. He's managed trucks. He's managed restaurants. And he's trained lots of our leaders. And he's excited to go to D.C. So he'll go down there and be a part of bringing that same culture and making sure things are trained in the right way. And I think that there's a lot of things I can try and do with our training processes and everything else, but I need to rely on the employees, really, at the end of the day, to share that culture. It's just, culture is such a nuanced thing. It can't just be a pamphlet I hand somebody.
Yeah, and it's all steeped in your values. And
yeah.
So we've got about 10 minutes. Maybe you could take us through your slides.
Listen to me at Burger King. Michael did mention that. I was still an employee of McKinsey at the time. And my wife was afraid some of my clients or colleagues would come in, but I had like 5 weeks of vacation because I worked too hard, so I took it all at once. And I should back up. This was the first point of risk I bought down before I even had to test out the food. It was more of a personal point of risk. Like, am I willing to quit my job and jump into this? And for me, the cheapest way to test that out, I'd never worked in food before. cheapest way for me to test that was take some vacation and get 2 part-time jobs and see what I thought of it. This is Petrus. This is the food truck guy I mentioned before. And he's wonderful, and he really got me started. And this is from that. This is a canteen truck. Do you guys have trucks like this here? You do. Okay. All right. And this is my first truck. That's my daughter Clementine. So we're very excited. And this is our paying customers, which is like, those of you who've started businesses, I'm sure have had a certain similar moment, and those of you who will go on to it, will probably have the same. But you're planning and working so hard. There's still just something surprising and magical when people actually show up and give you their money for something you've made. I mean, it's obviously why you're doing it all, but it's still this moment, this spark, this moment of just delight is really amazing. And the line's growing. We've gotten a little faster. At this point, I had 2 customers who we knew who were up front who were helping us take orders. Something we used to do back then. It's like, I used to say, you come up front of the line, take some orders for 10 minutes, and I'll give you your sandwich. And you'll save yourself some time. This is one of our early menus that is to the question of what do we do with the waste. So we hopefully don't have much waste because we run things down. This is Mayor Menino, who is the consummate carnivore. I don't know if you guys, he's been the mayor of Boston forever. And he was very unsure. Well, I'll take 2 minutes to tell you the story. It's sort of a funny story. He came up, it was sort of a meet and greet thing. He was supposed to shake my hand because I was a new entrepreneur. And we were the first food truck in the Boston area, and we were doing this thing, and it was working really well. And he came up, and I was in the middle of explaining to him that there's no meat on our menu. And I'd heard afterward that his aides had told him that, so he wasn't so sure about this whole thing. And I was telling him, there's no meat on the menu, and he's ignoring me and just looking, and he says, BLT. And he says, I'll get one of those. And I was like, no, it's a soy BLT. And he looked at me, suspicious, and I said, oh, it's all right. It's not going to fool you. It's not bacon, but you might like it. And he sort of, people do these physical things. He sort of took a step back away from me. And but he couldn't get out of it. He said, oh, I don't have any money. I said, I'll buy it for you. He said, oh, there's a long line here. I can't cut. I said, I'll go on and make it for you myself. It won't impact the line. And then he's just sort of trying to get out of it. And then we caught him. He finally took a bite because he couldn't do anything else. And then I took a picture of him 5 minutes later, and he's talking to some Boston Globe reporters, and he's just finishing it up. And the best measure for us if someone likes our product is if they eat it all the way through. I mean, if you love something, even if you're full, you probably finish it. This is that first truck. So this is over near MIT Kendall Square area in Cambridge. And this is you see a little bit of that community that develops around. It's a lot of fun, different people talking to one another. This is one of our restaurants in East Cambridge. We did something different. We try to make everything, I didn't talk about it a lot today, but transparency is really, really important to us, mostly because I'm in the most dishonest industry in the world. And so we think the only way we can gain any credibility with customers is just let them see things. So we share the good and the bad. We open up the whole side of the truck. And when we went to build the commissary, instead of building it in a warehouse somewhere, we wanted to build it in a place where people could actually see it. So our whole commissary is open kitchen, and it's all in a retail environment. It's like B- retail. It's like cheaper retail, but it's someplace you can actually go. And you can sit down, and you can order from a little restaurant we have attached to the commissary, and you can watch everybody cooking around you. This is our restaurant in Harvard Square, and this is our newest restaurant in Burlington, Mass., which is our first in the suburbs. And it's really exciting. We've been there for a couple months now. It's pretty new, but you're starting to see all the seats and tables filling up at lunchtime, and it's working the same way it worked for us in Boston. You ask customers, and the things they love about us are the same things they loved about us there, and the way people find us is the same way people found us there. So
Eric, as I understand, it's important to understand how it's going to be perceived in all areas, not only the density of urban and suburban. You have to prove all of those things before you prove you're actually scalable and able to be potentially the next McDonald's or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if we were thinking about our future value, it's a very different company if we can only build in urban centers. Pret a Manger, I love them. I don't know if you guys know them very well out here, but it's an awesome concept. But they only work in urban areas, so they're going to top out at a couple hundred units. If you can work in suburban areas and more broadly, the number of units you can do increases. So we're trying to figure these things out again, we're trying to buy down that risk in the cheapest way possible. So I'd rather jump into a suburban location now and figure it out now instead of building in all the urban spaces over the next 5 or 8 years and then trying it at some point later. It's a lot cheaper for us to figure out what we are right now. This is the suburban location from the outside. You can see the nail salon next to us. But there's a Chipotle right by us and a couple other things. And this is just I threw this picture in. It's so hard to relay these sort of anecdotes, and there are so many of them every day. To the point of culture, this is part of what the employees love about their job. It's just, we really make friends out of customers in a really neat and genuine way. And people can write up, people can make drawings and tape them on. We have an open wall and we have paper and crayons, and somebody left that up one day, and you see this picture of the 2 little kids looking in, and all of our prep and our kitchens are all wide open so everyone can see them. And those sort of moments just happen all the time, and they're one of the harder things to relay to somebody outside of it, but they're one of the most satisfying things for me and my employees. One of our trucks, this is actually our director of communications, but you see, I put this in here because that iPod in her hand, that's how we take orders. That's like our equivalent of a cash register. And there's a bunch of reasons why we do it that way, but one of the biggest ones is just like the intimacy you can even get from this picture. Like as you come up to take an order, there's not a counter and a register separating you from the person on the other side. And as you break that down, and it's more of an eye-to-eye contact, you get more of a natural and human connection between the server and the customer. And it's really neat. And if you look around our industry in general, you'll notice the people on one side of the counter act in ways toward customers that they would never act to a friend. And likewise, customers act in ways to the server on the other side in ways they would never act to a colleague. So there's this sort of horrible social disconnect, and we try to break that down. Just some excited customers. This guy, he's been trying to go to every single location we open on the first day. This was like, this was the opening day of like I think the 6th time he'd done this. We use active displays a lot. I guess that's a part of how we also bring the culture around. We have all the exciting stuff we're doing. We write up in our website is not static. It's like a blog. So it just changes every day what's on our website, and it's all what we're doing right now. And all the employees read that. A lot of our customers do too. But it's important to me from a customer standpoint, almost more important internally, as it's like becomes the focal way we share what's going on in the company. And it's really maybe 4 or 5 new posts a day. So there's a lot happening, and our employees get a sense and get to be have front row seat to all that. This is we built our own order system that we use to take orders, which is really cool. This is some pictures of the food, so some different drinks. We make everything except ketchup and mayo and bread from scratch. So those 3 things we buy. We're about to start making our own bread, but I'm never going to make ketchup and mayo, I don't think. But we make everything else from scratch. And so these are some examples, some of the drinks we make, somebody chopping, and a big thanks to Chipotle for sort of paving the way and showing us that you can actually do food, make food in location at scale. I mean, they were really the pioneers in that and gave us some of the confidence to do this kind of thing. He's tasting, and we do this all day long. All of our employees are tasting our food all day long. Some more coffee service, just more our tea, French fries. This is a really neat one. I'll pause here for just a second. So there's a thing. This is the kind of thing we're able to do with our model, which is really cool and at the heart of a lot of like the sort of social change we're able to make happen in Boston. There's a thing called a pawpaw. How many people here have heard of a pawpaw? Okay. I heard of it about 6 years ago for the first time. And it's like a crazy tropical fruit. You scoop that out like it's like custard. And it's related to soursop, but it's native to North America. This thing grows in Appalachia. It grows in Ohio. And this one grew in Massachusetts. So I heard of this about 6 years ago, and I thought it was incredible. And it doesn't work very well in grocery stores because the skin bruises easily, and it's ripe for like 12-hour period. And it's not good if it's not all the way ripe, and then it spoils very quickly. So you just can't find them anywhere. I've been hunting for them for like 6 years. I thought I had like a couple leads over the past few years, and they fell apart. And then this year, through like a friend of a friend of a friend, I finally found a farmer who had a crop, and he was so shy he wouldn't talk to me, but I talked to his wife, and I secured for us 60 pounds of pawpaws. And we had a ton of fun with them. You know, we brought them in, the way we make our menu and everything, we can just inject them right in there, talk to everybody about them internally to the employees as well as externally to our customers. And most everybody hadn't had a pawpaw before, and it's this like crazy tropical fruit tasting thing. It's sort of like mango, banana, vanilla taste, but very distinct and unique. And we made soda with it, which is a really nice, accessible way to share that with people because the soda is not that scary. It tastes like the pawpaw, but doesn't have the texture issues and everything else. So it's a neat summary of how we can, you know, what we can do with food, you know, how exciting we think like vegetables and fruits can be, and also how we can engage our employees and then our customers and find ways to sort of share and create excitement around this in ways others couldn't. So we do beer at our restaurants, just more pictures of food. Sodas. In Burlington, we found a bunch of our customers would come in. Burlington is a suburban location. So there was this, a lot of our customers come in, they'd be halfway through an order, they'd order us Coke. And I said, well, we don't have Coke. And then they would just turn around and leave, like they're halfway through their order. And we just thought, that's amazing. We never had that in the city. So we thought we should do a soda program. So this is like it's the kind of thing we experiment with all the time. So we thought, let's try soda. So we brought up, now we do like 4 or 5 sodas a day. We make them in-house. So it's the same idea. And now I don't lose those customers anymore. This is the last picture I have in there. This is actually Vincenzo, who's going to go to DC. But he's one of my managers. And this is like 5:20 a.m. He just finished packing a truck, and he was showing us what he could knock his heels together. But I think it captures a lot of the fun we get to have doing what we're doing.
Okay, we
Michael,
have some time.
we have some more time, and I'd like to fire through a lot more, as many questions as we can get through in the amount of time we have.
We have about
so let's
10
go
more
over here.
minutes.
This woman in the back over there. Let's go.
I'm interested in how you've approached funding to support the rapid growth you've described.
Yeah, my industry is incredibly capital intensive. So it's been an important thing from day one. I can tell you what I did. I don't know if it's I'll give second point of credit to my entrepreneurship class. Because Bob Higgins, my professor there, he said to us, try to find investors whose interests in the investment and the company and also the talents and resources they offer line up with what you're going to need. So he sort of had this idea of like you figure out your investor strategy starting from the standpoint of what does your company need. And what does your company need being more than just money, because obviously that's going to be common to any investors you bring in. And so I sat down and went through that process early on. I thought, ideally I would have 4 to 6 individuals. They would have long-term interest. They would have, it wouldn't be any venture capital. They would have resources to dig in and support us with subsequent rounds. And they would have skills and experience and networks in different areas that would help my business. That was sort of my dream or ideal. And then I was trying to raise money in fall 2009, which was a rough time to raise money. And I also didn't know anybody in the food industry because my first experience was working as a cashier at Burger King. So I think I talked to 100 or 150 people early on. I went through every network I had, places I'd worked, schools I'd gone to, and I reached out to anybody who might be in any way connected to what I was trying to do. Everybody I talked to, I always asked them, do you have anybody else you think I should talk to? And I just continued to do that. I talked to tons and tons of people, just sort of informational things. And over time, I ended up finding those 5, and it turned out to be 5 investors, of which I knew 1 when I started the process. All the other 4 I'd met through all of this. And I haven't brought in any venture capital money yet. It's all been equity financing. And they were exactly what I wanted. One guy is a real estate guy. One guy was a finance guy. One was an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. One was a food business. Actually, one of the largest private meat company in the country is the guy who runs that. It's one of our investors. It's a small hedge for them.
Okay, got another question back over here. Got a question over here? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, I'm curious
So, now that you've sort of demonstrated there's a mainstream demand for vegetarian food, do you plan to engage in any sort of community education to spread the word about like a vegetarian diet and draw more interest to Clover?
So we don't tell anybody that it's vegetarian. I mean, literally, it doesn't say anywhere. The only way you find that out is somebody tells you, or you ask one of my employees, is this vegetarian? And we're not coy about it. I mean, we answer it straight. But yeah, it's not something we talk about at all. And I think it's actually a critical part of the success we've had in what we're doing. I need to compete as in the industry I'm in. People buy food based on three things, and they vary how much it matters to different people. But it's price, it's convenience, which often has to do with speed and how close it is to you, and it's taste. And it's some combination of those three that's driving every decision people make about their food. Notice that list doesn't have ethically responsible, it doesn't have any of that on there. It's really not. I mean, if I'm not beating my competitors in my combination of those three things, I'm not going to win. So there's not a lot of room for us, like from that sort of initial customer acquisition standpoint, to be talking a lot about, oh, it's a really good thing, it's vegetarian. Because end of the day, there's almost nobody that's going to eat my food. If it's not convenient, it doesn't have the right price, and it doesn't taste great, they're not going to eat it, regardless of what I'm telling them about how good what wonderful things we do. And on the other side, if it is the right price, it tastes great, and the convenience factor is right, they're going to buy it regardless of that story, right? So we're sort of quiet about that.
One more question.
Got another question over here. Go ahead.
Great presentation and congratulations. As you grow and scale, do you foresee this concept evolving into a franchise?
It's funny, when I was doing these initial talks way back in the beginning trying to figure out financing, franchise is, I'd at least figured out at that point, it's sort of a financing question. And I kept asking different people, and I talked to the head of stores for Starbucks in North America, and she said, you have to own your own stores. There's no other way to do it. And I talked to head of franchising for McDonald's franchise. They said, oh, you have to franchise. You need the small entrepreneurs to build the company. And I was really confused. And I thought I had to figure this out like day one. I was like, what am I going to do, franchise? Or I've got smart people telling me two different answers. And I I met with Ron Shake, who started Panera and actually has just gone back to run it again. But he broke it down for me in sort of the smartest way. He said, and they actually are half and half. But he said, it's just a financing question. He said, if you can get payback on your restaurants in less than 18 months, there's no way you want to give that away. And you're going to own your own stores. He said, and look at those in our industry that do own their own stores. They typically have the rapid payback, Chipotle, Starbucks, some Panera. If your payback is more than 2 years, then you probably need a better way to finance it, which is what franchising becomes. And if it's in between that 18-month to 2 year range, then it's maybe a bit of a toss-up. But he broke it down for me that way, and I think it's really clever. So given my understanding of it that way, I'm hoping we don't have to franchise because it will mean we don't have the payback we'd like to have on our new units. We'll get out here. It'll probably be a little while, honestly. We've got a lot of work to do on the East Coast first, but
Let's give it up for Ayr Muir.
Thank you so much.